Hey folks, it's Neil from Anchor Ranch Farm in beautiful Scioto, Oregon. I like the rain, it makes the grass grow. I wanted to do a video about 3 things that small farmers and those people who support them do that are not sustainable. Most of us who are in this care about sustainability. For us, we actually don't like sustainability. We think that you should leave the world a better place than you found it. So we're all about regeneration, not just sustainability. But most of us do care about the environment, local ecology, that kind of thing. So 3 things that a lot of small farmers and people who support us do that are in no way sustainable. The first thing is not having children. Now, I get it, not everybody can have kids. Not everybody thinks that they would be a good parent. Although I think a lot of people set their standards too high and aren't willing to sort of make the sacrifices, or don't think that they could make the sacrifices that you absolutely can once you have a child. But if you can't have kids, or you don't think you'd be a good full-time parent, you're an uncle or an aunt, or you have a friend who has kids who you could help support. But simply put, if you are not preparing for the next generation to take over from you, you're not engaged in a serious enterprise. And that's basically it. Without children, without kids, without the next generation to take over, nothing you're doing is going to matter in the long run. That's the number one necessary thing for sustainability, is to have people to sustain it. And that, again, say you just you're not able to have children. Your situation is such that you can't have kids around on the farm. You could at least be training someone to take over from you, and that needs to be. You can't just hire someone overnight and expect them to understand your values and what you're trying to build with your farm. So that needs to be a long-term thing. That needs to be someone who's with you for many years and ends up, essentially running the operation for you. And that brings me to point number 2 of things that people do which are not sustainable. And that's not paying farm workers enough. Not paying farm workers a living wage that can support a family. And I don't care that, picking strawberries is low-skilled labor or something. I've done it, and in fact, it's not something that the average office worker could just pick up and do right away, or do well right away. But I don't care about that. It's not about what it's worth economically. If you want something to be sustainable, people need to be able to make a living on it, and they need to be able to support their families. So I see all these small farms, and they're getting their labor from one of 2 sources. The first is underpaid immigrants, whether illegal or legal, it doesn't matter, who are being exploited, let's just call it that, by the farmer, and not being paid enough to, they're living in trailers, they don't have good living conditions, they're not able to prepare for the future, they're working in a farm but they're on food stamps. That's just unacceptable. People need to be paying their workers a living wage. And I mean, of course, okay, yeah, you don't have to start someone out with 0 experience at $20 an hour plus benefits. But pretty quickly, someone who knows what they're doing and is doing a good job for you needs to be there, needs to be able to pay their rent, pay their bills, provide for their family. And if economically, if your business model relies on paying people low wages, you're a bad business person. You're not doing good. You shouldn't be doing that. That's a bad bit. Either you are not competent to run it, or that's a bad business, and you shouldn't be doing that. The second thing that people do is use is the woofer crew. The will work for food, the college age kids who are sort of doing low paid farm labor while they find themselves, search for stuff to do. Sure, that's a great summer job or something, but you need to be either kicking those kids out the door after they work for you for a season, and you also need to be hiring people who are going to be with you full time, long term, who again you pay a real wage. This idea of I'm gonna woof for a few years, in between college or something, or while I'm going to school part time, and then figure something out. That's not a career path. People who work for you need to be on a career path, a farming career path. You need to be training them to be future farmers, to run a farm business that is sustainable and that provides them and whoever works for them with a living, with a real living that can support a family. And the third thing, sort of unrelated to and from a consumer perspective, if you a lot of farmers say, well, I can't afford to pay people that much because then I'd have to raise your prices. Then raise your prices. Raise your prices. Explain to people who buy from you, and if you're a consumer of products from small farms and you want to support this movement, expect to pay the real cost. Americans pay. Now I know a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. We need to do everything we can to help everyone have access to good, real food. But at the same time, if you can afford it, Americans pay far too little for the food that we eat. It's unbelievably low. You look at the historical statistics, what we're paying now is unbelievably low as a percentage of disposable income. And almost all of that goes to prepared foods and takeout and restaurants. Almost none of it goes to home-cooked meals that you're getting from somebody where you're getting the food directly from the farmer who raised it. So ask your customers to pay more. And if you explain to somebody what your values are and what you're doing, and they still balk at paying the real price, the real cost of what it costs to raise and make food, paying the workers to do it a living wage, that's not somebody you should want as a customer. That's not somebody you should want to. That's an unethical person that you shouldn't want to associate with. Just kick the dust off your feet and move on. There are plenty of people out there who understand and want to support family farming, real family farming. And then the third thing that is kind of unrelated to the other two, is something that actually I've mentioned on a video before in relation to our farming practices. But the third thing that small farmers do and people who support us do that is not at all sustainable is eating a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet. And God bless the produce farmers out there, the small farmers, not the big agribusinesses, but God bless them as well. But I hope they stop and start farming more sustainably. But simply put, there is no sustainable, renewable source of soil fertility other than animal manure. That's it. If you're not integrating animals along with your vegetables and fruits, you're not engaged in a sustainable farming practice. Vegetable farming is extremely extractive in terms of soil fertility. And sure, you can compost, but if your business model is growing things on the farm and then selling them off farm, you're not composting all of the nutrients back into the soil, obviously. So really the only way to be sustainable is to have animals that you integrate with your farm, rotate crops and grazing or other animals, and that's the only way to have. That's the way all soil fertility throughout the world has been. All natural soil fertility throughout the world has been formed forever. There's no other way. So if you're, eating a a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet because you think somehow that it's sustainable or more sustainable, good for that's stupid. Stop doing that. Work animal products into your diet. Now, on the flip side, a lot of Americans eat far too much meat and meat that's too cheap. So don't go the other way, but it needs to be it needs to be a balance. The balance is what's sustainable. And certainly, someone who's eating a vegan or a vegetarian diet and eating subsisting mostly on corporate ag, big agribusiness staples like soy, that stuff is horrible for soil. That you're destroying the land by purchasing those products. Nothing about that is sustainable. The same thing with there's this weird. I don't think it's a real thing that people are actually considering, but there's been some weird, trend in sort of small farming and small food things about insect-based diets. That's not. I mean, an insect-based diet is simply consuming the same amount of. For a pound of insect protein, you're getting the same. You're using the same amount of grain or whatever you're feeding the insects as you would to feed a CAFO, confined animal operation, pig or chicken or something like that. There's no, and at least the waste product of the chicken, even in a horrible factory chicken farm, at least the chicken manure can be used as a fertilizer somewhere. I mean, it's not efficient. That's not the best way to do it, but there you go. I mean, this idea of like a large-scale insect-based diet being sustainable is just laughable. It's completely unscientific. So those are the three things that I see too many small farmers and the people who support them are doing or not doing that really aren't sustainable. One is preparing for the next generation, whether it's your children or supporting families and pro-family policies. Two is not paying farm labor a living wage. And three is not integrating animals into your diet and your farming system. I hope that reaches some people. So that's it from us here. Just checking out we've got a few places where I need to repair a fence. We're getting sheep within the week, I would hope, if I can get this work done. And got to make sure that even though we use electric netting to move the animals and do mob grazing, we've got a perimeter fence to keep out the coyotes, and sometimes animals like to go astray a little bit. Just doing a fence walk and checking out places where I need to do a little bit of repair before we bring sheep on to graze our pasture, which is growing wonderfully now that the rains have come. I like the rain. Peace be with you.